Hello people, I'm not here to tell you you have rights. You don't need to be told you have rights. That idea was instilled within you by the great creator of the universe upon his conception of you and your deliverance upon this earth to live out your mortal existence. What is obvious is you need to be reminded and informed how to stand up for your rights individually, while at the same time creating a unity among us, we the people, a unity the bureaucrats, politicians, and judges fear so much. That is the reminding and informing I will do. Before anything can be reasoned upon to a conclusion, certain facts, principles, or data to reason from must be established, admitted, or denied. Ideas rest upon their merits, and if they are good, they most certainly will. The Constitution is to be looked at as a constitution of government ordained and established by we the people of the United States. What the corporation of the United States government has done to the Constitution is beyond atrocious. It's treason. But that's another issue. The state was founded on the relation of rights. Protection is its aim and object. And that protection is but another word for justice, or the obtaining and granting every man his due. People, man did not enter into society to be worse than he was before, nor to have less rights than he had before, but to have those rights more secured and better protected. It is the duty of the court to afford that protection. Justice is of perpetual obligation and essential to the well-being of every society. As the end intent of law is the happiness and perfection of the general society of mankind, it enjoins upon every person the punctual observance of benevolence and goodwill, as well as justice towards his neighbors. Now, people, we must realize every county and city is an incorporated sub-state, still created by we the people for our protection. They belong to us, incorporated through charter with the intention of purpose of protecting us and our rights, not lining the pockets of judges and bureaucrats with gold. That is exactly what the judges and bureaucrats have successfully accomplished by the hijacking of our lower municipal courts through the manipulation of the true power of the jury. Allow me to briefly explain how this was accomplished. See, back in colonial days, in the 1700s, after the Revolutionary War and our declaring independence, we need to go back that far because that was the point at which we began as a country. See, most colonists, including the Founding Fathers, were highly studied and knowledgeable in the field of law. They also knew their rights. They had just warred for years against King George III and Britain in a fight of their life, exerting their rights. They also knew the only way to maintain and protect those rights was to establish a system of law with a buffer zone between tyranny and liberty. The jury in a trial was, by design, to be that buffer zone. See, people, the truth about court is the jury is really the judge, and the judge is really just an administrator who ensures the proceedings are carried out according to due process. Anyway, back then, after the closing arguments and before jury deliberation, jurors were instructed by the administrators and the justices of the peace that it was their duty to conclude to their decision using their moral conscience and conviction based on the character of the accused, the nature and circumstances surrounding the allegation, the letter of the law as to how the law was written, and the validity of the law. Was the law a valid one, or did it trespass upon the rights of man? Now, this system of law worked well, clear into the mid-1800s, when we, as a country, nearing the end of slavery. See, prior to the War of Northern Aggression, many slaves were escaping for their freedom. When they were caught and prosecution was attempted under the Fugitive Slave Act due to the moral conscience and conviction of the jurors who, many of whom, were against slavery, and the circumstance, the slaves were only running for their freedom, and the validity of the law. Everybody knows that there is no legal maxim that affords one human being the ownership of another human being. So for the most part, the prosecution of the slaves went unsuccessful and the escapees were set free. This is where the corporate takeover of America began. The plantation owners, who were corporate America of that time, were incurring massive revenue loss. So they turned to and paid their senators for resolve. The senators, in turn, turned to the judges, where, in meetings of secrecy, they appealed for a solution. The solution concurred upon by the judges was to change the deliberation instructions to the jury, instructing them they were to render their decisions based solely on the letter of the law as it is written. And by the way, that meeting was such a success, they're still having them today. And we can see how well it worked by the current state of the system of law and the millions of American people who are in prison for, along with those of us who are indebted to the corporate state by the fines incurred for victimless crimes. Realize now that the vast majority of the legal disputes initiated by the police on behalf of their employer, who is the state, where the plaintiff is the state, the judge, the prosecutor, and the antagonist, the police, and only witness, also the police, all represent the same party, the state. And since not one of the elements of a crime can be produced, there is no corpus delicti, the body upon which a crime has been committed, or a victim. There's no mens rea, a guilty mind, a guilty or wrongful purpose, criminal intent, and there's no actus reus, one who has been actually committed a crime and has been judicially charged as so. It doesn't even qualify according to its own laws to be heard in a court of law. The state operation of the courts are therefore indistinguishable from that of a criminal cartel, and it's time we take our control of the courts back and put them to the use they were intended as our protection against tyranny, overzealous government through design by the founding fathers who knew how to repel and defeat tyranny and oppression. You need to know this because if you did not know, every time you are in court, you are either petitioning the courts for redress for damages caused by another party, you are suing them, or you are being sued by another party for damages they claim you have done. And yes, this includes all traffic tickets and every other various legislated statute violation. You're not so friendly policy enforcement officers so blatantly hand out at will. They are recognized in a category as damages to society. People, we are the jury pool. Eventually, you too will be pooled to be on a jury. And when you are, remember, America was and is founded on the common law. To make the conception of common law simple, if there is no victim, there is no crime. Unless somebody has received an actual injury from another, whether it is a physical damage, the loss of life or liberty, or the loss or damage to any part of his property, including the entire wealth of his estate, no crime has been committed. Men are therefore free to do their will so long as he keeps his evils and wickedness to himself and does not offend against public rules of decency. He has committed no crime and is beyond the reach of corporate municipal law. Jurists, stop being puppets of the corporate American thugs by aiding and abetting them in the extortion of your fellow Americans' liberty and freedom to survive. Those Americans are your blood, your mother and father, your sister and brother, grandmas and grandpas, uncles, aunts, and cousins. By finding them guilty of the corporate legislated bullshit victimless crime for the profit of the corporation, you are as guilty of extortion as the corporation by knowing and allowing these atrocities to occur. So jurists, remember, no victim, no crime, not guilty. It's called jury lawlessness. And with that, jury lawlessness, you alone, as a single jurist, have the power and fate of another human being in your control. No judge, no senator, not even the president can tell you how to choose what you believe. And people, unless you have actually caused injury to another person, stop going into the court and pleading guilty to their bullshit lies of a crime. Demand your right to the jury trial. If enough of us will do this, the courts will be so overwhelmed with jury trials, scheduling them will be near impossible. And with enough people being the jury pool, and in on the jury is the answer, no victim, no crime, not guilty, by refusal to convict on all these legislated victimless crimes, they will be rendered useless to them, being a waste of time and money through the failed prosecutions. They will have no choice but to repeal the legislated victimless crimes. Come on, people, it's time to unite and fight in the courts. established by the Founding Fathers as our weapon against tyranny. Together we can take our country back one legislated, victimless, non-crime court case at a time. Knowledge is the beginning of reason. Reason and ignorance, the opposites of each other, influence the great bulk of mankind. If either of these can be rendered extensive in a country, the machinery of government goes easily on. Reason shows itself, and ignorance submits to whatever is dictated to it. I have presented the knowledge. It is up to us to show our reason. With enough people in on the jury is the answer solution, we can bring this corporate government to her knees. Let's make this work. Thumbs up if you like the idea and think it'll work. And please, share this idea with everyone you know. Thanks for watching.